Welcome to the Bhive. Today we're getting a little bit political. Play the theme song.
You're now entering the Bhive with your host, Double B.
Welcome to the Bhive. I am your host, Double B, aka Bobby Williams. And just so we can kind of look back on this, we're about 2.5 months into COVID right now. So I'm staying at home a lot. The hair is getting very, very long, but I'm doing it. I'm staying in the house. So this is, I think, a very special show. It's especially important for anyone that lives in Olympia, Washington, my home community, that wants to stay informed about, what's going on with the city and the general direction of things. We're talking to Jessica Bateman today. Jessica is a member of the Olympia City Council. She is the mayor pro tem, and she is running for the state legislature now. I'm really excited for this one. Welcome to the Bhive. You're the deputy mayor of Olympia. And I guess first, what does deputy mayor even mean? Or what is a deputy mayor?
Yeah, and the title in Olympia is actually mayor pro tem, but no one ever knows what that means because it sounds so weird. So I just use deputy mayor. It basically means you're the vice mayor. And so when our current mayor, who is Cheryl Selby, is gone for whatever reason, or if she was not able to serve in her capacity as mayor, I would take over that role. In Olympia, we don't have a strong mayor. We have a city manager. So our mayor really is just the facilitator of the meeting. So the chair of the meeting. Mm-hmm. And then also ceremonial things.
Well, it's interesting, just our mayor is kind of a ceremonial thing. So we have the city manager, who seems kind of more like the city manager almost is the mayor. They're doing the day-to-day.
Yeah, we're, as a city council, responsible for hiring the city manager. And we just did that. We voted to suspend the search for a city manager and hire Jay Burney as our city manager. He's been the interim. They are charged managing the city, the employees, all the departments. We create the way that we want to go, what we want to do, and the city manager implements it and makes sure that it happens.
Okay, so you've been a city council member how many years now?
This is my 5th year.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you're getting ready to hopefully make the move to the state legislature. Mm-hmm. And so, what is that role? Is it just kind of city council on a bigger scale? Or for people who don't know about politics and stuff totally. Like that, what are you kind of going for?
The difference between the local city council and the state is the state policy, state law. So at the local level, we're charged with zoning, with city ordinances, city law, and then you have state laws.
Well, so what are your core values, or what are the things you hope to bring with you to the state legislature?
I think that's different for every person. For me, my values have been influenced by my lived experience. Mm-hmm. And my lens is really with working people, working class people. I was raised by a single mom and was the first in my family to go to college. And so that's where I come from.
It seems like the hot issue is COVID right now, but in general, it seems like homelessness is the top thing people are always talking about. Are we attracting the homeless people or the people experiencing homelessness of the whole region because we have these services? What's your response to people that say those things or think like that?
Yeah, they call it the magnet theory. I think it's a false premise for the people that say, we're attracting people because we have services here. I also think we don't have enough services. So, I understand people getting frustrated when they see abject poverty and they see people experiencing mental illness. It's inconvenient to see those things, and it's concerning, and it can be stressful, and people can have anxiety. I mean, I've seen people go to the bathroom right in front of me, and it was very, very unsettling for me. I think we should focus not on vilifying people that are experiencing homelessness and focus on what the solutions are. For instance, we worked on the home fund. We really needed housing for chronically homeless individuals, and there was very little funding for that. So that's when we decided to work on the home fund to get a sales tax. Having them in a house and in a home and stable is actually more cost effective, and it's the moral thing to do.
Like, I think a lot of times in America, we think like, oh, that can happen in a different country, but this is something the whole world is experiencing right now. And we're all kind of counting on each other to like isolate and stay in, or you just really feel that interconnectedness. This seems like a very difficult time to be homeless. What's happening now to like serve people? Because it seems like it's not only those people, but it's like, how do we stop people from spreading COVID too?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. COVID has illustrated for us in absolute terms that my health is connected to your health, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Even people that we don't even know and don't have relationships with. And we're very concerned as elected officials, I am, about the impact of COVID on our unsheltered population. So currently the Home Fund first site, that it's our future site, it's the Martin Way spot. There's a old optometrist center that's currently there, and that's being used as a temporary quarantine area for folks that are unhoused. And then also thinking about the fall, if we've got hundreds of people that are unhoused and we get an outbreak, it'll spread like wildfire, and then it will inundate our healthcare system and potentially cost lives.
Well, and I don't think that would stay with people unhoused either. That would get around. Well, yeah. It's a difficult time. And what's your sense of how the next year's looking? You think we're going to be like this for a while, or?
So I work as a health policy analyst during the day, and I work with providers of healthcare. And this is just so new for everyone. We don't know. That's why they call the novel coronavirus. There's going to be waves. We're going to potentially have like reopening. And then what we'll have to do is monitor all of the data to make sure, as we see an increase in cases, we're going to have to go back to social distancing and maybe sheltering in place again. Currently, what we need to do is increase our testing capacity. We have to be able to test for it and then do contact tracing to find out who else was exposed. You've seen other countries where they've used like apps on phones or your data from your phones. I don't think that the public here would be supportive of that.
Yeah, it's interesting just seeing areas like China, or where, tracing people's phones, and then it's like, well, that would kind of be like, whoa, that's an easy solution for tracking where everyone is. But then on the other side, you got to let people be people, and we don't want to live in a world where we're like oppressed or anything. What do you think is like the balance of that? Because it's like we're trying to keep everyone safe too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is when South Korea did it, they did it right away. And so they were able to stop the spread. We did not react quickly, and it spread throughout. So it's no longer about stopping it. It's about containment and slowing the spread, because it's already throughout the United States. I think it's an interesting question about personal freedom and right to privacy, and then also the health costs. I mean, people are having conversations currently about, are these measures of social isolation more drastic than the impact of a certain percentage of people dying? I mean, I can't believe that people are actually having that conversation, but they are, so people are also having conversations about privacy and whether or not that infringes upon a person's I think people will from all different walks of life will have different ideas about that. In the areas where they have done that, they've had much more authoritarian governments. And so like in China, we don't have that here. So I don't think it's even something that could be possible here.
I don't know. Isn't there some sort of situation where they're like suing the governor over
Yes.
like an overreach or something? What's that situation? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so currently there are a group of legislators that are suing the governor about his use of a public health emergency surrounding COVID-19. And quite honestly, I think it's a attention-seeking action. And I'm not sure what chord it strikes with them. Maybe their personal liberty being affected. And that's unfortunate because we want to do what's in the best interest of public health.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like we're just having a national leadership problem too. You know, Mike Pence recently went to a hospital, wasn't wearing a face mask. Everyone around him was. And it seems like, okay, even if you're sure you don't have coronavirus, set an example for America. Like a lot of people are looking to Mike Pence and to Trump. But
I think there's an incredible lack of an absence of leadership at the federal level and within the presidency. When we elect people to represent us, we want them to embody the best in us and embody hope and a way forward and a path forward. And when you have a time of, extreme fear, people are scared right now, and there's a lot of anxiety, and they look to their leaders to lead. And when you have a person like the vice president going to a hospital, Johns Hopkins, where it says protocol is wear a mask and he's not wearing one, what message does that send? Not only are they not leading by example, but they're politicizing a public health crisis. And I know the impact that has on our healthcare professionals. Those are the folks, those are our heroes that are working day in and day out.
Do you think if COVID and what's going on in the world right now is kind of nature paying us back for abusing it? We're polluting. Do you think this is nature kind of fighting back and correcting course? Maybe like these hornets.
The hornets are terrifying. Have you seen what they look like?
I know they're big hornets.
They're huge.
Yeah.
You can see their faces. That's how big they are. I mean,
I don't want to see any bug's face.
No, I don't either. And they're here in Washington State. Did you know that?
Are they first here? Why is Washington the first for COVID and the hornets?
It's not right. I don't know, but we have people monitoring the situation, but damn, they need to get those hornets because they're terrifying.
Well, that would be awful if it's like COVID and you can't go out for a walk because there's these 2-inch hornets.
What we need to be afraid of is the honeybees, because our honeybee populations have been in decline they don't really know exactly why. There's a lot of different ideas about that. They can't remember if it's colony collapse disorder or mold or mildew, but they're not healthy right now. And then to have these hornets that literally decapitate honeybees and they can kill one honeybee every 13 seconds. I mean, they just go through into their hive. So in terms of Mother Nature getting, just desserts with COVID, I think that the inequities within our system have been splayed open in the healthcare outcomes related to COVID.
It seems like a lot of how you were brought up almost shapes your values in a way, or you had kind of a tough childhood, it sounds like.
Yeah. My mom, I was raised by a single mom. My parents got divorced when I was little. I think I was 2. And that was difficult. Growing up in my house was very dysfunctional. My mom had a substance use disorder. It created a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, a lot of chaos in my life.
Yeah. What did that kind of look like? Or
a lot of instability. I mean, she was an alcoholic. That was her substance of choice, to self-medicate. And, I think it's important when we talk about substance use disorder to really frame it correctly. We know now that people self-medicate in most cases because they've experienced trauma. Yeah. And it makes complete sense that a person would do that. And my mom is no different. She experienced a lot of trauma as a young person, and she never learned how to get through that in a healthy way. And so she did that in the easiest way that she could, which was through self-medicating. That also made it very hard for her to parent. And so a lot of parties, a lot of drugs and alcohol, a lot of inconsistency, instability, yelling, arguing, sometimes violence, the police coming to the house. It was just very, very unstable. And, I've been reflecting upon it because I knew I was going to be on this podcast. And I think at the end of the day, as a young person growing up, and I was on the board of Grub. I'm very passionate about at-risk youth and ensuring people have help in achieving success and opportunity. Because for me growing up, what that felt like was I was always afraid, and I didn't feel loved, and I didn't feel safe. And so, it was very hard for me to be successful in school. When I would go to school, my teachers, thought that I was smart and I was very capable, but I was not. I think my grade point average was like 1.8. I just was not able to focus, or, I was depressed. And I also had a sense of wanting to protect my mom. So I didn't want to tell my school about what was happening at home because I thought she would get in trouble. And I thought that she would get mad at me and then she would take it out on me.
Uh-huh. So, that all could have been true, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So I was fortunate. I got court-ordered therapy, and my therapist was awesome. And I was just so excited to have a authority figure that could listen to me and be like, yeah, you're really like that. You need help. Like there's something not going right here. Like this is what I'm dealing
before
with.
That, did it feel normal, or like, was it sort of like, well, this is what I've always known and this is kind of how families are, or you had a sense of this isn't normal?
No, I knew that it wasn't normal.
Yeah.
I felt very like helpless, like I couldn't control it. But I knew, and that was because I was really smart, and I knew that it wasn't my fault. And she, she would tell me that it was my fault because there was a lot of emotional abuse, and I was smart enough to know that it wasn't. But the injustice of having a parent that couldn't parent, and like I would pray to God and be like, why doesn't my mom love me? It wasn't that she didn't love me. It was that she couldn't even function,
Yeah.
And it took me years of therapy and going through that to recognize and see the humanity in her and how she never got the tools that she needed. She never got the unconditional love that she needed. My grandma, her mother, it was a horrible situation. And, versus I think the big difference between me and my mom is that I embraced talk therapy, and I embraced, sharing with other people. And that's really freed me, and then also enables me to help other people and empathize. And, you have to be able to be vulnerable and telling the truth about where you've come from and what you've experienced. And it's been really hard for my mom to do that. I think she feels a lot of shame. We have a good relationship now. And that, has shaped my perspective and the work that I do. And that's why, like the Home Fund, for example, believing that every person has the right to a home. They deserve a place to be on their own. Because when I see someone that's experiencing a substance use disorder, I think that could be me. That could be my mom. That could be my aunt or my uncle. There's just a couple steps that a person can take and your life is just dramatically different. Or the family that you're born into, the parent that you have, whether you have economic security. And there are actually studies that demonstrate, like, for instance, how much money your parents earn. You can look at a person's lifetime income earning potential. And poverty, there's a link between stress and poverty,
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like, in a way, like it's tragic you had to go through all that, but then it's almost like a strength that you did now because you can empathize. Do you feel like that, or?
Yeah, I do. I think, the reality is we've all been broken. Every person, every family has a secret or something that happened. No one's perfect. So we all have circumstances where we could use additional help. And that could be therapy, or it could be extra, it could be food stamps, it could be extra financial and nutritional assistance. None of us are superhuman, And so when I think about what is in the best interest for all of us, it's taking care of each other and ensuring that we have the resources to do that. So my mom, wishing that she would have had the opportunity to have someone help her process what she had gone through as a young person, like I did, and being able to walk through those things. That's one of the reasons, like with the home fund is low barrier. It's trauma-informed care, which is helping someone where they are, making sure that they're safe, and allowing them to have the autonomy to make the decisions for themselves about what they want to accomplish, versus the old model of helping someone that's homeless, which years ago, I mean, you might have to go through a 12-step program, or you might have to go to a religious organization as a prerequisite for getting into the housing. And the successful best practice now is you just give people housing, because that's the prerequisite for like anything else. You have to be able to have a home, right?
You know, my background is just working with youth and engaging them in pro-social stuff. And I feel like a lot of times that is like therapy, or it's therapeutic. And sometimes I'll come across like families or foster families or teachers or whoever who try to kind of use like engaging in the arts or something as a reward. They're like, if a kid's not behaving, they can't do the bridge. And it's like, that's exactly why they should do it, or that's what it's there to help with. And so I feel like that kind of relates to what you're saying of like, okay, well, if they're not sober, then they can't be in housing. And it's like, well, that's exactly why we need them in housing. And
Absolutely. And I think for folks that have had substance use disorders, especially, that's a placeholder for feeling. You know, it's like, I'm going to do this and I don't have to feel. And usually you don't want to feel, because what you're feeling is a really negative thing.
Yeah.
And in order to learn how to not utilize that medication, that self-medicating, you have to learn how to do something else in place of it that isn't harmful to you. And that could be rapping, that could be doing poetry, that could be art. But the bottom line is that you're doing something else. But the circuitry in a person's brain, it's like you go on a path every single day, and that path is wore down, and you just naturally, and then if you can't just stop. If you're used to doing it every day over and over again, you have to get a new path.
What are you doing with your energy?
Exactly.
You strike me as like a very driven person. Do you think part of that is like for your mental health to be so motivated?
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. I'm very action oriented, and people refer to me sometimes as a bumblebee because I can't hold still. I have to be constantly moving. And fortunately, I channel that into wanting to help make my community a better place and help people.
Yeah.
I do struggle with just being stagnant and just, maybe relaxing or just enjoying the moment. I'm still learning how to do that. I've gotten better. And I think that also is related to experiencing trauma myself. I was on edge all the time as a young person and didn't feel safe. So I got accustomed to and evolved to that. So now as an adult, that's something I get to relearn, is how to just relax. And so I do things like, I really enjoy gardening. I love cooking. I love my dogs, which are Ruby and Moxie. I got a new addition in March.
Oh, cool. Well, I mean, I think it's a great way to channel your energy, like empowering people. Well, so, I mean, you have kind of risen above these circumstances. You think it was all just sort of therapy and connecting with the right people? Or
I had a high school teacher that was Mr. Hansen. It was him and my therapist. He really confronted me. He saw my report card. One day he asked me to come in and show him my report card, which I did. And it was all D's and F's. And he said, and I started, giving him my story about, well, my mom's an alcoholic and I'm depressed, and which I was. Those were both true things. Like, I struggled to get out of bed, and I would skip school just so I could be by myself because I had time alone. But when he heard that, what he asked me was, so what you're saying is you want to let someone else define the outcome of your future. And that, for some reason, really struck me. I respected him, and he took the time, and I knew he cared about me. And I just thought, and then my therapy session, I had like my last one with my therapist, where she basically said, if you stay here, I don't think you're going to grow emotionally or intellectually. I think you're just going to be stagnant here. And the two things happening, I called my dad and said, I need you to come get me. I don't want to move out. And so I did. I moved in with him. And that turned out to be, I moved out when I was 17. He didn't understand a person going through that kind of trauma would take time to get back to normal and be healthy.
What happens? You're 17, you move away from your mom, then move away from your dad. Where do you go after that?
Well, I moved in with a family friend, and I stayed there for a couple weeks, but when you're living with someone else's family, like for me, I just felt like I was imposing. Like I knew they cared about me so much, but it just felt like, I'm an imposition on them. They're not my family. They don't have to take care of me. They're doing this, how long is it going to take, And so I moved in with my boyfriend who was 23 and I was 17, and he had a whole host of challenges. I pretty much picked someone that was really chaotic, like my mom, because that's what I knew. And that lasted for a couple years. I moved back in with my mom because I was working as a barista, going to school to get my associate's degree. And then my mom continued with her drinking, and it was really hard for me. Living with someone with a substance use disorder for me it was really hard for me not to be depressed. It was very depressing. So I ended up moving out at like 2:00 in the morning. She had an episode where she got really angry. She thought that I had stolen her alcohol and hid it. She had done that in a blackout and she couldn't remember where she had hid it. And I just was like, I can't be here anymore. So again, I stayed with a friend. And that was when close family friends of mine said, we think that you need to get out of this area. You need to be out on your own and be economically self-sufficient. And in order to do that, you need to finish your education. And so we have a friend that lives in Olympia, and she'll rent a room to you for really cheap. And then we'll transfer you to Evergreen and you can finish your bachelor's degree there. But the deal is they also helped me. They invested in my college education financially. They said, the deal is you have to leave like within a week. You have to go.
Wow.
And I'd never lived outside of my hometown. I was terrified to go to a university, like where all the smart people go. Mm-hmm. They took me to my orientation and walked me around the school. It was summer. Transferred. I worked at Starbucks, and I was able to transfer to a Starbucks in Tumwater. Got my room to rent. May, she got me groceries that very first day. Took me to the grocery store, got me groceries. I got enrolled in my classes, and then 2 years later, I was given a presentation on greenhouse gas emission reductions following the Department of Ecology's lead policy analyst. And then 2 years later, I graduated with my bachelor's degree.
Wow. What a journey through all that. I mean, and now you're like a real leader in this community, and it just seems like you've come so far.
Yeah, it's, each step along the way. And I think like for young people, especially if any of your Bridge folks are listening, I think like with the imposter syndrome of like being like, this is really like, this is what I'm doing. This is the position that I'm in, am I really supposed to be here? One thing I found really helpful is I would listen to the people that I respected. So, when I was getting my bachelor's degree, I had a professor that was amazing, and I looked up to her a lot. And she said, have you ever thought about going into graduate school? And I was just like, no. Like the fact that I'm, where I came from, like the fact that I got my bachelor's degree was like the moon. I never even thought about getting my graduate degree. But when she said that, I thought, well, if she thinks, I respect her a ton, and if she thinks I can do it, maybe I can, and then I looked into it and I applied and I got in. And then, just along the way, like when Chris Reichdahl said, have you ever thought about running for city council? And I was like, no, never in a million years. So I think it's really important to encourage young people and to tell them, especially women, like they say, when it comes to running for office, when a woman decides to run, she's been asked 7 times.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, it's been great having you on here. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts or just ideas or anything you'd like to say to the community?
Thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast. I'm a big fan of your work in the community and helping empower young people in pro-social activities. I think it's incredibly important. We live in an amazing place and have a lot of amazing people working to make our community better. And I think that it's a great privilege to be here. And I'm honored to be on the city council and do the work that I do to try to help make it an even better place.
When is election day?
August 4th. Ballots drop in 10 weeks.
Where can people connect with you too, or learn more about your issues?
That's right. I'm a horrible politician. I vote jessicabateman.com. There's a Meet Me tab where you can learn a little bit about the work that I've done. There's an issues page where you can see the different positions that I have. And there's an endorsement page where you can see folks that have supported me. You can also get a yard sign, volunteer. We're going to be doing a lot of phone banking events if anyone wants to phone bank. It's also a great opportunity for people to get involved. If you ever want to run for office, volunteering on a campaign is a great opportunity, and I'd be happy to have people do that.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Jessica.
Thank you, Tommy, and thank you for the work that you do with young people in our community.
So there you have it, Jessica Bateman. Vote for who you want. I'm not going to say who I'm voting for because that's private. But Jessica, just thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show, to share what you have in your heart, and we're proud to have you as part of this community. Next week, we're flipping it up a little bit. We're talking to Antonio DePina, who was on the Netflix series The Circle. So we're going to be asking all about reality television, and it's just going to be a very interesting conversation. I've never talked to anyone like this before, so tune in next week, give it a share, give us a comment, even if it's just something simple or something you didn't like. Just, we want to hear what you have to say. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Peace.